Hello everyone. Today we're gonna talk about GUI applications and event-driven programming. We've covered a little bit about GUI in the past, and today we're just gonna deep dive a little bit more into it. So GUI stands for Graphical User Interface, and it's just a way to allow the user to interact with the operating system or any other programs that even you might write in the future using graphical elements such as icons, buttons, and dialog boxes. I will show you a couple of examples. Most of the GUI is done through a thing called dialog boxes, and it's just something that pops up on your screen, a little window that pops up on your screen, displays some information, and then lets you pick which way you want your computer to act or perform some sort of action. Now, the older version of GUI was the command line interface. The ancestor of GUI is the command line interface, and it was just a way to let the user determine in which order the things can happen. So it wasn't as extensive as GUI back in the day. Now, using GUI environment, the user can also determine the order, and that is called the event-driven GUI now. So this is what a window looks like, a pop-up window. This is a GUI program. So this particular program will calculate the area of a rectangle, and it will ask you to enter the rectangle's length and the rectangle's width, and then it will just calculate the area for you. Whenever you create your GUI program, the steps are the same as if when you would create a general program the way that we discussed before. The design steps are pretty much the same, but the only difference that GUI has whenever you write a GUI program is that you also have to design the elements that make up each of these windows that exist. And you also have to include the flow, how you can move from one window to another. So back in the day, it was a really long and tiring process to design your own graphical components, each windows, and just design all of the GUI. However, right now, since we are in the modern age of computers, it is way easier than to do it in the past. There are specific apps that will allow you to, or not even applications, there are specific extensions to languages that will allow you just easier development in general. Here are some examples. So if you're using Visual Basic, C++, or C#, you can use Microsoft Visual Studio. And if you're using Java, NetBeans and JBuilder will be your bestest of friends. This is what it would look like whenever you would develop your own pop-up windows and stuff like that. So you would just drag elements from your menu. You would have a menu on your left, on your right, or on your right side, and you could just drag that element to where you want it to be located. However, before, you would have to code this whole thing by yourself using HTML and CSS. You would have to do it by yourself, and that takes a lot of time. So here are some of the examples of the components that are quite useful to be familiar with, that you might want to use whenever you write your graphical user interface programs. So here's just a couple. There is a button. We have a button. Some action will occur when you click a button. Then there's a label. It just displays text. Then a text box will allow your user to enter some sort of input, some text. Now, a checkbox, we all know a checkbox. This is what it looks like. And then you will let your user just check the checkbox. A radio button, you can only select one option. Whenever you took the quizzes that I gave you guys, you probably saw radio buttons. At some point in questions, you could only pick one choice, and that would be a radio button. However, if you can pick multiple choices, that would be either a checkbox button or a checkbox button. Yeah, that would what it would be. Now, there's also a combo box, and the combo box is it's just a drop-down list. User can select items from, and there's a list box. user can select an item from the list, and a slider, it will just let your user to drag that slider along to select a value from some sort of range. So it would probably look something like this, and a slider right there, and whenever you click, it will just move one way or another. And here is the actual representation for you. So this is a text box, checkbox, combo box, slider, as I showed you just now, buttons right here at the bottom. Buttons are usually at the bottom of your window. A label, this is a label right here. Then a list box where a user can pick from, and radio buttons. It will only allow you to select either one, either option 2 or option 3. Each component will have a name, so it's just called a component name, and we use them to identify which components and where they are located, the same way as you would use a variable, or whenever you would create a string variable, integer variable, array variable, it doesn't matter. You would use a label or some sort variable name. Same thing here, just instead of it being a variable name, we call it a component name. So this one will be called the hours label, and this one will be called an hours text box. So each of the components will have each their own name. As you can see here, pay rate label, results label, gross pay label, pay rate text box, and then calculation button and exit button. By using HTML and CSS, you can set properties on each component, and you can set just things like color, size, position. You can just change the way it appears on the screen by using properties. Now, here's a general idea on how you should make a window whenever you want to create a window. So you would sketch the window, just make sure that it's not as bigger than your screen. Usually we want a window pop up in some central part of your screen. Then you would create the necessary components and name all of them. Remember the names that we had? Name all the components. And then you would just put the properties of each component. So for example, if you wanted this button to be red and this button to be green, you could totally do that by using properties such as color for each of the elements. So now we're moving on to event-driven GUIs. So with the event-driven GUIs, there's a thing called event handlers, and those are written to control your event-driven GUI. And what that means is just after you create all of your windows, you code the event handlers, and those event handlers are going to respond to any action that occurs, such as whenever you click a button. So for example, here, if you would click a button, event handler would calculate the gross pay, or if you click this button, an event handler would make the exit from this program. So an event is an action that takes place within your program, and an event handler is a module that will automatically execute whenever a specific event occurs. So that's the only difference between the two. This is the pseudocode for how you would write the event handler. It's just for you to be familiar on the structure of the whole event handler module, So generally it would look like this. So some sort of module definition to let the computer know that this is a module, then the component's name, and then the event name that you want to happen whenever this component is being used. Then whatever is happening inside, whatever event occurs, and then just the end of your module. And then for example, this is an event handler that closes a window. So as you can see here, exit button, if clicked, close. Pretty simple. There is such concept as init module, and it just stands for initial, and you just have to be familiar with this concept and the fact that init module is just something that executes automatically when your GUI just starts. So initial module, that's where it comes from, initial. In this example, we have a module, our initialization module, and all it does, it's just gonna display hello when your application starts. All it's gonna be. Just whenever your application starts, the first thing that your user is gonna see and the first thing that your computer is gonna do it's gonna print hello, and the first thing your user is gonna see is printed hello on the screen. Couple of things that you have to be familiar when you're designing your GUI applications for mobile devices is that your phone has a smaller screen size than your computer, and if you're designing two things at once, so if you're designing an application for your computer and if you're designing an application for your phone, that's going to be two different applications since your phone has a smaller screen size. Another couple of things, so you should use a smaller font. Then you also should arrange your components in a way that works with a smaller screen, because again, not everything is going to fit on your phone. And then you should also use components that will work well with touch screens. So for example, if your checkbox it really is really tiny, it's going to be really hard to click it with a finger, right? So you have to pay attention to that and make your checkboxes bigger, or just get rid of them and write your applications without certain components that just do not work well with touchscreens. So also you have to be familiar with the unique capabilities of mobile devices. So your mobile device obviously will make and receive phone calls, send and receive text messages, determine device's location, detect the device's physical orientation with 3D space. Whenever you use the compass or stuff like that, it will make sure that your position is accurate, and also it can determine when your device is in motion. This is what it would look like if you wanted to make a phone call, for example, a phone calls component, if it had a method called make call. Again, this is all pseudocode, but this is just to show you. So this is what it would look like. Your component name, phone call, then you would put a period and the method that you would like to call. In this case, it's a make call method, and then the number which you want to call. This is just a simple example of a pseudocode of a call workup, for example. If there was one, we have a call button and an exit button. So just two buttons, call home or exit. Just two options for you. And this is how your modules would look like in pseudocode. Now, same idea with sending messages. For example, here we have a send text and exit, send button and an exit button. And our module for the send button, whenever it's clicked, we would declare a phone number to which we would want to send a text and a message that would be sent. For example, here it's I'm on my way home. So this app will only send this particular message. I'm on my way home, nothing else. However, if you had an input right here somewhere for the user to input it, you could make the user type a message and then send that input to a specific number. But in this particular situation, the only thing that our program will send to this specific number is going to be I'm on my way home. Here's a couple of methods to find your device's location. So a location component has to be set up in place for this to work, and location would have these specific methods to determine the device's locations. First one is get latitude. It's just going to return the device's latitude, and it's going to return it as a real number or as a float number. Then remember, real and float numbers are just decimals. Just a fancy word for decimals. Now get longitude, same thing, just gonna return that as a real or as a float number. It's the same thing, real or float. And get address will return to you a string containing the street address that is closest to the device. This is what it would look like if you would code a get location app. So, for example, it would show you your latitude, your longitude, then your address, and it would have an exit button. This is your code for it. Again, same idea, same general idea, just methods and components. Components using their own methods. That's all it would do. Alright, so this is all I had for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this lecture, and this is the last video that you will probably have to watch for this class, I hope. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this class, and let me know if you guys have any questions regarding chapter 15. Thank you.